All right, let's do this one.
Oh, what was that?
What
Car
was what?
inside.
Yeah, no, I mean, literally, hey, dude, car there. Fault Carlos Sainz all day long. Should we start the show?
Yeah.
All right, let's do it. Hey, welcome to Bunny Lap. I'm going to switch this up. I'm Parker Kligerman with my good friend, Landon Cassill. We're going to talk about all forms of motorsports. And on today's show, we're going to discuss the Cup Series, some controversy in Xfinity that I'm not involved in. F1
Big surprise.
Wingate. Can we call it a Wingate in F1? The flexible rear wing on the McLaren. And big news down under in Australia. We've been taking all their drivers, and now they've gotten one big piece of a lot of American racing. But we start the PR lap, Landon. I raced at Watkins Glen, and I discovered something in this race. You want to know what it is?
What is it?
You can go really fast at Watkins Glen with just 3 gears.
Which one were you missing?
The 4th.
4th gear?
Yeah. Yep. Blew it out of it.
How did you make it through without 4th gear?
So you would think you would be really slow down the backstretch, and you are. But the way it was working out was like on the restarts, I'd just bang it off the rev limiter, right? Mm-hmm. At like 90, and we had a 9200 chip in it, I think, which helped because I don't usually over rev ever, knock on wood. And so I could get just far enough on restarts where we would go off in the bus stop and everyone would back up because you're on restarts. Everyone, backs up that corner because we all congest down in the bus stop. And so I could lift early enough that I could defend to the inside and hold people off. And then as we got in the single file, the tires fell off enough and the brakes fell off enough that I would just feather it at the top of the...
You could make it.
Yeah,
so let me run through this.
Well, hold on. Do you remember ARCA? Do you ever do ARCA where you had the RPM limit and you'd have the rev limiter at 1.5 miles, for a quarter of the straightaway? So we used to do that. And when I was at Penske, you had to do this to have the right gear, but you just destroy the rev limiter down in qualifying and in the races. And so I learned to feather it at the top there. And so that's what I would do and just keep it right on the rev limiter because, it had to go 70 laps, which these motors are not designed to do. Kudos to ECR. I sent all the ECR engine shop ice cream today as a thank you.
So you would go, the front stretch, 3rd gear, down to
only.
2nd, turn 1.
Yep.
Back up to 3rd. And
then carry it
you would
all the way to the
stay
bus
in
stop.
3rd gear through turn 2, 3, 4.
Yep.
Stay in 3rd gear into the bus stop, down to 2nd gear. You wouldn't do 1st in the bus stop.
No.
So then would you take 2nd gear through the carousel?
Through the carousel, then back up
and
to
then
3rd,
grab 3rd,
down into 6th, then back to 2nd.
back down to
again.
2nd, and then
Yep.
and then you would hold 2nd until the final turn, and then back up to 3rd down the front stretch.
Correct. Yes. You a little tired there, bud?
That makes sense. Do I look tired?
You just sound tired.
Really?
Yeah. Now you're back. There we go.
Sorry.
Well, energy, baby. Hey, let's pump it up.
Let's go.
So we finished 7th. We would have finished in the top 5 because I was in that gaggle of cars in the last 2 laps between AJ, SVG, Chandler, Smith, and Sheldon. We were going through the final corner, and I was in the pack with them right on the tail. And then I got absolutely pile-driven into the wall by the 39 on the final corner. And, we fell back to 12th, and then there was this huge wreck down the backstretch involving the people who ran into me, which I may have uttered that they deserved it for the way they treated me.
Over the radio?
And, yeah, I may have said that on the radio. And then we finished 7th. So, successful day considering in stage 1 when it broke on lap 10, I was like, oh, my God, we're finished. This is terrible. And then turns out you can go we actually had the fastest lap at one point in the race, and we're running top 3 lap times for a huge portion of it. So, pretty cool to be able to survive that. They tried to add those rumble strips on the X of the corners. They actually rubbered up and then gripped up. So it actually added more grip, I felt like, at times. So it had the exact adverse effect. Which I have a funny story about that. Elton Sawyer, who is in the competition side of NASCAR, he and I were talking before practice, and Arca was practicing about the rumble strips. And he said, what do you think? Did you look at them? And I said, yeah, I looked at them. I don't know what it's going to do. I feel like we kind of would run out there anyway. And so we go up and we're like, let's go watch ARCA practice. So we go in the NASCAR hall and we go look at it, and the ARCA cars go all the way out and over it, like the fastest ones. And we just both looked at each other and said, well, it was a nice attempt.
Oh my gosh.
So, hey, kudos to them for trying and doing. And I said to him, I said, look, I appreciate the ingenuity and the thought process, because it's not like having those horrible, turtles or something that will destroy a race car if you're forced out there, which then gives the leverage to the inside car because you'll just force them into there.
Too much leverage. Yeah.
Too much leverage. And so I thought it was perfect. You didn't want to go as far out, although in the Cup cars they started to, but
but at the end of the race, you could see the guy, like when SVG and Buescher were chasing each other, it wasn't faster to really go farther out. Like it was there was a little bit of time lost if you went out too far. So
yeah,
but it's still faster. It's still faster than staying on the racetrack.
No, it definitely is. There's no doubt. It just opens up the track in such a way that you have to use it. But yeah, I think overall it was a big day for us points-wise to put ourselves basically in a position where, as long as, knock on wood again, a meteor doesn't hit us at Bristol, I think we should be good to make it in the playoffs. So we have a little bit of breathing room, which is nice. And overall, just our car was so good. We did a lot of work.
What's your breathing room?
We're 70. Josh, what am I?
I believe you are 74 points to the good, but let me confirm that real quick.
Yeah, we're 74 good there. We're 42 above the 8. And so
When's
basically,
Bristol?
As long as we finish 25th or better with no stage points, even if there's a new winner, we stay in, is what I believe. So, and we're actually pretty good in the owner's points. I think we're 30 above the 19, or we're 42 above the 8.
Actually, according to NASCAR's own website, you're actually 85 to the good.
Maybe I'm 85 to the good.
Which is even better.
Hey, that's even more numbers. Cool. We will start, unless we win a stage or some stages or win the race, we will start the playoffs negative points right now, finishing 9th in the points.
Oh yeah.
So we will be the first ever playoff car to start negative from our penalty at Michigan. That's kind of interesting. The graphics guys at NBC were telling me, like, you really need to get some playoff points because our system is not designed to do negative points. So we've never had to do this. No one's ever started.
Coming from a team that has promoted races, and I understand exactly what that what that entails.
Also,
you know what?
Go ahead.
That reminds me that on Sunday I texted you and was like, I think that motorsports is the greatest example of Murphy's Law. What can go wrong will go wrong.
Yeah, I know. It always will. It just
always will. Like whether it's crashes that obscure wrecks where a car lands somewhere that you never expected it would land, or hit the one wall on the entire property that doesn't have safety barrier, or for the first time in history, a car having negative points going into the playoffs, and the multi-billion-dollar network partner not having the engineering.
It's not designed for it. It's not designed. I think they've obviously figured out a way, but they were just laughing at me. They're like, only you would end up in this position to force us to do this.
They had to outsource, or they had to make some poor software engineer in-house work an extra 10 hours that week just to get it recoded, all because of...
You're welcome. It's
like that meme that starts, where it's like the guy leaning down with the tiny domino, and then it's the giant domino, and like the tiny domino at the beginning is Patrick Donahue getting penalized for an illegal spoiler, and then the big domino is like NBC having to restructure their entire engineering department for broadcast overlays.
Oh my gosh. This is so funny. It's definitely that. I'd like to real quickly just say thank you to everyone who came up to me after my announcement last week at Watkins Glen, and all the kind comments. We got tons of comments, tons of viewers on this podcast, listeners. Meant the world to see all that. Thank you so much. It's very flattering, and really warmed my heart to see all that. Thank you to know I made some form of impact in the sport. I'll still be around in some capacity, especially here at Money Lap, but overall, it was just a really nice weekend of people coming up and saying, hey, we appreciate you and that sort of thing. So that was really cool. Let's talk reviews. we did get a new Apple review. Finally. Remember, we're on a quest for 200 Apple reviews. We only talk about the 5-star ones here because we only have 5-star reviews. So if you go and leave a 5-star review, we'll put you on the pod like this person, FUHD. Parker and Landon are killing it. 5 stars. Parker and Landon have a great podcast about all types of racing. Ran into Parker on pit road this weekend before the race started, and he was kind enough to stop for a picture of me. You're welcome.
Nice.
Thank you.
Do you remember that, Parker? Do you know exactly who that was?
I don't know, but I appreciate the review. So I did have a lot of people come up and say, I love the Money Lap podcast, which happens every weekend. So we got listeners. I know it. I know they're out there.
Looks like our first Spotify review here is from a user with a auto-generated name or just a whole string. It looks like a Bitcoin address.
It does look. I think they might have put. It's Brian M. And Brian, you may have put your Bitcoin address in here. We won't dox it, but we would like to let you know.
Yeah. If you want to see it, go to our Spotify, check it out. The Money Lap might be the most informative while entertaining racing podcast out there. Keep up with the great work, gents. Kligerman, 24th Xfinity Series champ, Brian M.
Let's go. All right. Let's do it. We got to get through Bristol, but we might be able to pull it off. Also on Spotify, Rudfan04, Broski's longtime listener, first time to review. You guys are badass. Love your insight and content. Keep them coming. Also just found out about the Drafty Car game, downloaded it, and like 10 races in, you guys are sponsoring me. That's right, we have a Money Lap car in there. I thought that was badass that you all are in the game. Cheers. Thanks, Rudfan. Appreciate it.
Big fans of Drafty Car.
Yes, big fans. Brian Blackford out there done an incredible job. Everyone's talking about Drafty Car. All my crew guys are playing it. It's hilarious. It's taken over the NASCAR world. So kudos to Brian Blackford. As I mentioned on YouTube, we had a ton of comments just obviously about my news last week. So we appreciate it. Really tough to even pick out one or two. We just basically want to say thanks to all of you. We see it and we appreciate it. Also, one other thing on YouTube. If you're watching this on YouTube, you may notice that we've been making clips, but not just 30-second clips. These are, we talk about a lot of different topics in this podcast, so we're taking some of the best conversations and putting them into clips. Those are doing really well. So if you see those popping up, go check them out. Maybe you missed something in the pod that you wanted to see or just wanted to see those specific things we talk about. They'll be on there. Friends at the Money Lap email. We got this after my race on Saturday. Pretty funny. It is from... The subject is Parker's fourth gear from Parker's fourth the gear at Gmail. Dear Parker, bye. Hope you had fun surviving without me from Parker's fourth gear.
Somebody actually made an email address that's like it. So
yes,
that's great. No idea who that was. Well, it's your fourth gear.
Yeah, which is my fourth gear.
Your fourth gear is dead. So
very dead. I heard about it today.
Now it makes me think it's a conspiracy theory. Was this email sent before the race?
No, after the race. That would have been hilarious if it was before the race.
Yeah, it would have been. It's an inside job.
Oh, no.
Another email, which this one looks like it is finally anonymous enough that I can just read it without worrying about doxing anybody. Hey guys, Xfinity is my favorite racing right now, and Parker is the guy I cheer for on Saturday. So I am happy to hear that you're doing what's best for you, but I'd be lying if I didn't say I'd be a bit bummed. We are all too. If you race Rockingham as one of your races next year, I promise to be in the stands cheering as you get another checkered flag to add to your wall. Landon, I enjoy your rants, tangent, rabbit holes. Keep it coming. I am too shy to leave a voicemail. Sincerely, Tiny Baby Turtle. Please don't dox me.
We didn't dox him.
There was no... Yeah, I don't even see an email address on here, so good
no,
job with
Josh actually didn't put it on purposely so that you wouldn't dox them.
Well, if you do feel like doxing yourself, please send us an email. And but don't give us too much information. But there is somebody that you should give all your information to, and that is spoilerdiecast.com. You should give them your name, your address, your credit card, and you should pick out one of their items on spoilerdiecast.com, because if you're a racing enthusiast looking for high-quality diecast and apparel, look no further than spoilerdiecast.com, one of the fastest-growing companies in the industry. Parker, what sets them apart? Well,
what sets them apart?
I'll tell you. They pride themselves on exceptional service, so all orders ship either same or next day, which means you get your hands on your favorite products in no time. The best part, Parker, they have free shipping on orders over $20, so you get a smooth, affordable shopping experience with SpoilerDiecast.com. They have over 1,100 unique products currently in stock, so if you have a credit card with no limit, you could buy everything. They've got one of the largest inventories in the industry. They're NASCAR focused, but they got a little bit of everything: dirt, sprint cars, IndyCar, F1. The race fans like us, man. SpoilerDiecast.com.
Go check them out. Also, I just got the sample of my spiked coolers Chevy at my house. I posted it on Twitter and on Instagram and said, go check out Spoiler Diecast. Go buy it there. Use code MONEYLAP. And you can get a signed edition of myself signing it. Obviously, the last full-time car I'll have ever driven in NASCAR. So it might be worth something. I don't know. More than it's even already up for sale. It could be worth more one day if I go and do anything cool. So go check it out, SpoilerDiecast.com. Love those guys. Let's talk NASCAR, starting with the Cup Series. What a race. What a race. What a finish. What chaos in this one this past weekend. But I'm not sure exactly where to start, but I will say that the finish between Lee Diffie's call, the audio mixing, the crowd noise as they hit each other and the downshift sounds, the tech behind that is so amazing, but it mostly comes down to really well-prepared humans. And I was just talking to Sean Owens, who's the director, and I was like, man, it just blew me away, the sounds. And he's like, the craziest part about that is that shot into the bus stop is on that bat cam that's on a wire, but it doesn't have a microphone on it. So the audio guys are actually Brian Careau is one of them, who actually was the one who made the live mic thing happen, who I worked with on that. They're actually manually choosing the mics as the cars go along to match up the sounds to what you're seeing. So through that last lap, they're doing that. And then, they pipe, when the move happens, they decide to pipe in the crowd noise. And so just, when people wonder, like, when you get great moments like that, how did it all come together? It's all preparation and then just really talented humans making the right decisions in the moment, right?
It makes you feel like you're sitting in the stands and you can hear the announcer on the loudspeaker with you.
Yep.
Right? Which is like, that's the fan experience, is sitting in the bleachers and the grandstands, and it's so loud, you can hear everybody, but you can also hear the play-by-play call.
Yep. It's so epic. Also, Chris Buescher, he put the pressure on SVG, but where that all started was actually, and I didn't get this on the broadcast, so I apologize. But yes, in Saturday, SVG was behind me. He purposely chose the bottom and then used the bumper to move me out of the way. Then he did the same thing on the next restart to people in front of me. And so when I saw him take the bottom, those last couple restarts, I was like, he's planning to use the bumper to push that car up the 17 out of the way and then get the run. And that's exactly what he did. But then he didn't get far enough away so that when the 17 got to him, I know in his mind he was like, oh no, he's going to hit me back. I've got to fire it off in here. He fires it off into the bus stop, clips the wall, upsets the whole car, ends up over the curb in the bad way. And that exit curb for the next-gen car was so bad. If you went over it too far, you'd launch the thing in the air, which we saw Kyle Busch do in practice and spin out. And so, or maybe it was qualifying, I can't remember. No, it was practice. So then, he ends up out of it, and that allows Chris Buescher to get there. And Chris just did the right things to be in position to take advantage and put the pressure on. And that's the human element of racing, right? If you're the lead car, that's the hardest thing. They say pressure from the front sometimes, look out the windshield, don't look in the mirror. But in that moment, SVG showed he's human. I had to interview him afterwards. He was pretty gutted. But, I think still he was smiling because he knew it was a show, right? And he's a bit of a showman. And he appreciates good racing.
So we made such a big deal after Chicago of SVG's tactics and how clean he was and how impressive it was. And then it seems like here in Watkins Glen, not that he is a stock car racing driver, whether he's Australian or not. So he has all the permission in the world to use his bumper. That's what stock cars are for, right? That's what makes them special. Is he just getting used to, is he understanding how we race here in NASCAR? He's like learning the limitations of our rules and what we can do and what Like, is that what's happening? Are we analyzing it too deeply, or what?
I think he's learning,
that hard?
Yeah.
Is it that hard to pass at Watkins Glen versus, Chicago, where?
Yep.
What do you see there? Do you think that we see a different SVG at Watkins Glen versus Chicago, and why do you think that is, if that's true?
So I think in the Xfinity car, he was just not as fast as he usually is, right? And he was not happy with his car in practice. He had brake issues. Wasn't happy with the brakes. Same in qualifying. And in the race, he just was not happy with that race car. And obviously they're in our debriefs now and that sort of thing, so I got to hear a lot about it. But I think he just didn't have the fastest race car. And so he became a bit of a stock car driver.
I want you to keep going, but that's typical of Watkins Glen.
Yes.
In NASCAR.
It's more oval-like.
Watkins Glen being smooth pavement, fast corners, banked corners, aerodynamics. Watkins Glen is a great road course for stock car drivers to excel above road course ringers.
Yep.
So it totally makes sense for a guy like SVG to have great success at Sonoma, Chicago, Road America, all those big, traditional road courses, and then go to Watkins Glen. Not that it's not a traditional road course. The place has been around for 100 years. It's a road course that races like an intermediate track.
And aero matters a ton. Car is probably the most, of all the road courses, your car is the most important factor there. So I think, absolutely, that lended itself to, why he was able to make those, or making those moves. Because he hasn't typically done that.
Why he struggled.
Yeah, and why
because
he
didn't his inherent advantage. That was my point of saying that. So his inherent advantage of being so superior under braking and tactically, it just doesn't make as much of a difference at Watkins Glen as it does.
Yep.
At other road courses.
No, you're right, and I think that's what led him to being a little bit more aggressive in the Xfinity race, and he learned that. And at the end of the Cup race, he knew he had to make some form of move because it was so hard to pass in the Cup race, as usual, those cars, and so he had to do something drastic on the restarts. That's what he did, and just didn't get it done. We mentioned there was also chaos in this race. Every playoff driver had an issue almost. It felt like, including. Probably the most visible one, besides Ryan Blaney, was Denny Hamlin, who gets involved in that wreck in the first lap. They actually end up changing the toe link in the left rear. They reset the toe in the front, did all these different adjustments. He goes a lap down, gets that lap back, is at least showing decent enough speed to sort of have a decent day, gets involved in a 3-wide wreck into the S's, which then destroys his car even further. He then goes another lap down, gets it back for the end of the race. They had tires, was able to get back to 20th or 23rd or something like that from being outside the top 30, which basically leaves him -6 going into Bristol. He has said this entire time Bristol's his place. He's won the last 2 races there, but they've put themselves in the hole that they have to go do what they do best at Bristol, and that's be up front, get stage points, and be in a position to win the race. Gabehart, after the race, came on the radio and was like, "We're going to our house. Our house. I want you to know that. Like, we're going to our house." And so it was very motivational about, hey, we're going to go to Bristol to win. One thing I thought was funny, and I put this on the broadcast, I had a conversation with Chris Gabehart before the race, and I said, hey, talk to me about Atlanta. Denny was very vocal about only wanting 20 points and sort of stuff. He said, look, we didn't really know about that plan, but then we supported it because it was based on logic and their history at Super Speedways and that sort of stuff. He's like, but on Monday, we had a conversation that's like, hey, man, that's a losing mentality. We didn't put 54 banners in this building with a losing mentality. We're going with winning mentality. And so I think, trying to sort of be like, we don't talk like that, the 11 team, which they should. They're a juggernaut at this time, in this series.
That is that's interesting. That's an interesting comment, interesting mindset. That I think Chris is a very intense person. That's one thing I've always respected about him. I think that's been a big part of what's elevated that whole team. So
yeah, I think he's elevated Denny in at this stage of his career. Denny's never been better, but I think a lot of that goes to Chris Gabehart and to his intensity, his preparation, his the processes he's instilled, the preparation. I'm sure that Denny has gotten into because of the osmosis of being around a guy like Chris Gabehart. Like, I think that all has an effect for sure. And that's why they have been the team that has been so good the last couple of years, since they got together. Another driver we mentioned in there that
before you move on, Parker, I dropped a statistic in our show notes. We always talk about how Denny Hamlin performs exceptionally well amid chaos in his personal life. Yet I think we found the kryptonite, and it's been talked about on his podcast, the dog effect. The Lulu dog effect. Do you think his luck changes around when he finally gets that creature out of his house and can finally focus on the playoffs once again?
Jesus. I didn't fully understand this. They got this dog, I guess. I even listen to his podcast all the time, and I didn't fully understand what was, what they were talking about. So I guess he got this dog, and since then he hasn't run as well. I don't know. That sounds ridiculous.
I don't actually care.
Yeah, I'm moving on. Poor dog.
I think I saw a picture of it on Twitter. It's a cute dog. I don't know.
That's not the problem. This is how racing goes. It ebbs and flows. Let's talk Ryan Blaney. He gets involved in that first lap incident, gets steering damage, can't drive the car back, gets towed. NASCAR tells him they're done. He was upset because he's like, how do they tell me when I'm done? Because, if you have 4 flat tires, they'll tow you back and you can still work on their DVP. Now, the problem is, I believe with the damage they had, they would never have made it fixed under the DVP. But the second part is, I think if you get towed, like the rules are basically if you can't drive it back, you're done. I think that's the correct rule. Like we can't, this was all to avoid broken race cars driving around the racetrack or, crash carts with the DVP stuff. And so I just think like, hey, if your car is that damaged, sorry, game over.
This whole thing has made me laugh once again over like how the culture of NASCAR drivers is to get the car back to the pits at all costs, right? Like, was it William Byron either this week or last week that like drove this car back that was absolutely destroyed?
Yep. This week he couldn't even turn right.
Exactly.
Turn right.
Yeah. It's like, nope, I'm getting in there, by God. Meanwhile,
Alfredo.
in F1, I'm pretty sure if a zip tie breaks, they're like, Lewis, we must have to retire the car.
Good voice. Well done. That was impressive. Anthony Alfredo in the Xfinity race tried to drive with his hood up, couldn't see, and drove directly into the barrier there into the bus stop.
Meanwhile, I'm pretty sure I've like backed one in and been parked smoking on the infield, passed out. And my spotter's like, hey, Landon, you can fire back up, bring it in, please.
Yeah. For years, it was like,
sorry, man,
smoldering, half on.
I'll get it in.
Half on fire, and they're like, start it up, man. Just see if it'll fire. See if it'll fire. See if you have oil pressure. And it's like, okay.
He's in the ambulance right now, but he's not driving it back.
Sorry, bud. We're good here. We're done.
Yeah.
So anyway, moving on from that. Unfortunate for Blaney, but I think that's probably the correct thing to do. The only other thing that stuck out to me in there is with all the issues, it did sort of flip the playoffs on his head. Hey, Josh, do we have our grids? We're heading into the cutoff race.
Yeah, let me grab the grids real quick for you.
We should see how we're doing right now.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, let me.
You pull that up before we get there. There's been an interesting discussion about these unlimited restarts, overtimes, and whatever. Which I think, honestly, if you're gonna do overtime and you're gonna do this whole thing in the hope of having a green flag finish, then I have no problem with overtimes unlimited. The only thing is people just lose their minds and drive like crazy, and it seems like that's just the nature of it. But you put when all that matters, you have 2 laps, basically one, to make positions, and you're not going to see that car again. You'll take any position in any way you can. It's just the way it is.
Yeah, I like unlimited overtimes.
I'm for it.
Double file restarts, shootout style.
Yep. I say keep it as is. Don't touch it.
Yeah.
So let's see. Josh got our things here.
The only thing I feel bad about as a fan sometimes is like, sometimes I almost feel like I don't even need to watch the race until the last 20 laps. And I don't like that.
That's a problem. That would definitely be a problem.
like I feel like I'm doing all of us a disservice, and the sport. It's a flaw in the sport when I can not tune into the entire race, catch the final restart, and have enough to talk about on this podcast. That doesn't make it sound like I knew everything that happened in the race. Like,
Are you telling us something?
Well, I don't know if it's. I don't know, but there was a lot. I mean, there's still a lot of interesting storylines. It's just that like it crescendos, and that's how NASCAR races are sort of designed right now because there's so much emphasis on the winner.
Yep.
Right. There's so much emphasis on Game 7 moments.
Yep.
Which that initiative was set over a decade ago by Brian France, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then, incrementally, NASCAR's made so many rule changes and so many things that just accommodate those winning moments. So the story, the show design, is meant to crescendo right at the very end, right?
Yep. Yep.
So all of those moments are going to trump whatever interesting strategy or whatever interesting thing happened over the course of the race, and that's the design of it. So if you're having a busy Sunday and you can't, sit down and just watch a whole race, you can at least catch the last 20 minutes and you're got pretty much all the content you need.
Don't say that. I do my best stuff on TV at the beginning. So you need to start watching the pre-race.
I do.
Josh
I turn it on.
No, I'm kidding. I know you do. So Josh has put our grids here. So I had in the first round, I had Blaney getting eliminated, Keselowski, Harrison Burton, and Ty Gibbs. Right now, below the cut line, Harrison Burton, Keselowski, Denny Hamlin, and Martin Truex. So I've actually got 2 of my 4 I had getting eliminated. Ty Gibbs is the next in, only 6 above in 12th. So I'm feeling pretty good about mine. Blaney, he's 29 to good, even with his bad day. So he should have a fairly good gap as long as nothing big happens at Bristol. I don't see
this too.
Yeah, what did
Burton,
you have? Oh, there we go.
I've got Burton out. Truex is out. Well, this would blow my bracket.
Basically, we all had Truex making it, and he's looking fairly not in a good position, although he's good at Bristol, and then Denny obviously is the surprise. Brad K is kind of the, surprise for me and Landon, but Parker, you are the all-seeing eye and can see Brad making it through.
Not making it through. I had him not making it through.
Oh, yeah, sorry, not making it through. I just want to point out that Joey Logano is just doing great at the top of the playoffs right now.
We all had him moving on.
Uh-huh.
So, yeah, you have him as the champ, but we all had him moving on. So, I mean, we're still alive. Well, I think, Landon, you're in a tough space because you have Austin Cindric out. He's in a really good spot, and you have Bowman out, and he's in a really good spot points-wise. So you're going to have a tough bracket. I've got a chance. Josh, you're an idiot. So you're the same thing.
I'm not doing too good over here. I got 3 out of my 4 wrong.
Yeah.
It's looking pretty rough for me here on out. But if Logano wins it, boy, I look like a smart guy.
Wow, you're cool. So we both agree we keep overtime restart or unlimited overtime restarts. I'm with that. I think from the race, nothing else really stuck out big time to me other than Carson Hocevar, once again, in the conversation at the front end of the race. That guy might win a race here before the year's out. I could see that.
Maybe Talladega?
I could see it, yeah.
Roval?
He seems to be good at
road
road
courses.
just
going to I'm seeing the same thing you're seeing. I'm just saying once we get into the playoffs, we're in the playoffs, but I'm just saying like you get deeper into the playoffs, those playoff drivers always just seem to kind of elevate to the next level. That second round, things get more serious. Not that it's not serious now.
It's serious.
But you know what? I don't know. I don't want to underestimate anything in this next gen era because that's the point of this next gen car is it is so much closer to level playing field on equipment that a mid-level team like Spire, that's a horrible thing to say. They're doing a great job. but a non-key partner team like Spire on their absolute positive lightning in a bottle best day can win a race.
Yep.
Where with the previous generation car, a team like Spire on their absolute positive lightning in a bottle best day was the top 15. Right?
They also had all 3 cars in the top 10, including Coyle Joy with his first road course top 10, coming off the heels of his first non-super speedway top 10 at Darlington. Since being announced that he will not be driving that car next year, performance picked up. I don't know. Or at least results. I don't always like to say results or performance. They're not the same. Another announcement that's an interesting one. Bubba Wallace re-signs with 2311 in a multi-year deal. Last week we were discussing how they have not re-signed the charter agreement. Is this an indication? Or are they just...
So interesting. It's so interesting. And I don't... This is more just a continuation of our conversation last week, but I'm going to say it because it needs to be said and repeated and brought back up, and that's okay because that's what podcasts are good about, is like deep diving into the minuscule of things. But I think I said last week that one of the most interesting things to me about 2311 is we're just going to watch this unfold in real time, and we're going to get to see what happens, right? And so now, just an update, they re-signed their driver on a multi-year agreement. What does that mean, Parker? Like, I'm serious. I'm very curious because they currently, the way I understand it, do not have a charter next year, right?
Come December 31st, yeah.
Is it December 31st, or is it, when is the actual,
I think
when
it's
does their charter expire?
I think it's through the year, so it's December 31st.
And I guess some of the other things that we don't know from last week is, what these imposed deadlines were that NASCAR did, right? Because NASCAR put a Friday midnight deadline 2 weeks ago on the teams, right? That's what triggered most of the teams to sign the charter. So I don't know what the or else was. So as, I think that it's fair to say right now, 2311 doesn't have a charter for next year. It's not that the charter is getting revoked. They just don't have one. It's an agreement. They didn't get re-upped. Yet they signed their driver to a multi-year contract. So then my question is, what exactly is he signing for? Like what is it? Are they guaranteeing him just income, but no guarantee of a race car? Are they guaranteeing him that he'll race in the Cup Series? And he's committing to them regardless of whether there's a charter or not? Like, I'm very curious of what both sides of this negotiation would look like, because if you're Bubba's representation, those are all of the questions that you would have been asking 2311 before you sign this contract. It's like, okay, we see your proposal for a multi-year agreement. What races are you guaranteeing Bubba gets to drive in? Right? Is it a full-time Cup Series schedule? Does he have a charter or not have a charter? These are all things that go into driver contracts, right? I've signed them both ways. And those have been, in my career, and I know in yours, like, those have been very, I don't want to say contentious, but very valuable pieces of negotiation, right? Like, I'll sign a multi-year agreement with a team, but I want guarantee that the car I'm driving has a charter, right? Or I want guaranteeing, if I'm not driving a car that has a charter, then I want guarantee that I'll get paid.
Yep.
Right? Or if you're not going to guarantee either one of those things, I just want to guarantee that I get paid, right? So you don't have to put me in a race car at all.
Yep.
But I still need to guarantee that. So it's very interesting to see Bubba make such a big commitment. Obviously, I think for Bubba to do that, 2311 must have made a pretty big commitment to him, and they have a vision for what they're doing. We just don't know what that is, right? But as of right now, to us, but 2311 doesn't have a charter. So they're either planning on racing as an open team regardless, or or maybe they've already reached a resolution with NASCAR and they've signed the charter agreement. We just haven't heard about it yet, or they plan to, or something. I don't know.
The other side to it is if you have a charter versus not, there's a huge financial component to that as to how the driver gets compensated and that sort of thing. So
right,
and it's very different. So is it a blanket number that's basically like we'll guarantee this number based off a charter, even if we have one or not, or so on and so forth. So that's That's tricky territory. To me, maybe it's an indication that this is all being alleviated, and tomorrow it'll be announced that they signed the charter.
Okay,
agreement.
so do you want to keep going for just 1 second then on it?
I'll indulge
because
you.
What's that?
I'll indulge you, but it does sound like you have a dog near you right now.
Oh, yeah, there is one jingling around here. So the scenario number one, which is probably the most likely scenario, is that 2311 has a charter. They're signing it, or they're signing the charter agreement. The deal's done, and all this conversation is a moot point.
Who's this doggy?
I know this is my dad's dog, Sinatra. go that way. Go that way. Scenario
this
number
is a
two
dog
is
heavy Money Lap podcast, by the way.
Scenario number two is they haven't sorted all that out yet, but they signed an agreement with Bubba. So then the question is, well, what does that look like, right?
Yeah.
Did they still make a commitment to put Bubba in a Cup car, regardless of a charter or not? Do they still make a commitment to Bubba to pay him, and Bubba's willing to sit on a bench for however long it takes for 2311 to put him in a Cup car? I don't know.
Yeah. I don't think we have any of these answers, but if I had to read the tea leaves, I would say this wouldn't have gotten done if there wasn't a charter situation coming to...
That's probably what's about to happen.
Yeah, I would say the resolution is upon us. Speaking of business moves in the NASCAR Cup Series, Jordan Bianchi reporting that Trackhouse Racing president Ty Norris has amicably left the team, sources tell The Athletic, hearing Norris may be headed to Kaulig Racing in an unknown capacity. That's pretty shocking. He was at
the first sentence or the second sentence?
First, we'll start with the first. He was at the formation of Trackhouse with Justin, and obviously came over from his time at MWR. He's been a lot of different. Was at DEI in its heyday, so not really sure what could have gone down there. I mean, on Sunday he was in Trackhouse garb and in the Trackhouse haulers when I was in there all over the place. So, and I saw him jumping up and down when Zilisch won. So not sure what's going on there. Headed to Kaulig, that's an interesting one. Not even sure how to read into that, considering their plans are sort of unknown for their second Cup car. I do believe that Kaulig, so they're the one component I could, and I hate speculating, so I'm gonna use my words carefully here. If you'll indulge me for a second. Mm-hmm. A lot of indulgence on this pod this week. There's a lot of groups looking to invest in Cup teams around the garage right now. And I believe one of the teams that has entertained a lot of those conversations is Kaulig. Just saying, maybe there's something going on there.
They've entertained investors, or they've entertained investing?
They're entertained conversations with potential investors.
Okay.
Yes.
What does that have to do with Ty Norris?
Could he be attached to one of those, is what I'm saying. Could he be representing, or in some form or fashion? That's all I'm saying. This is complete speculation. We shouldn't even go down this path. Now I'm going to be in trouble. But nonetheless, my point being, I just think, when you see a move like this, if this is for real, could there be financial components a part of it, that sort of thing? You never know.
I don't know. It's interesting to me. I don't know what I know Ty Norris personally. I think he's a extremely talented motorsports business individual, capable of leading an organization the size of Trackhouse or Kaulig, probably capable of leading, to an organization the size of both combined. I think that the rumor of him going to Kaulig is very puzzling to me, because I don't think there's room for him at Kaulig.
I don't know. Yeah. He is, he's very adept, though, and I think his specialty is on the marketing side, and that is one area that Kaulig has severely lacked, is new partners coming on board from outside of Kaulig's ecosystem, that sort of thing. Could be an opportunity there where, there's the Trackhouse organization is in such a good place, and he can utilize his talents in a place like that needs it big time. So
yeah, you're right. That's where there's room for him. Absolutely.
Let's move on. You commented on something Max Papis tweeted, and I didn't read your full comment, but his tweet was, my opinion, space then a period. I'm sorry, I'm not going to make finger grammatical errors here. I hear many race car driver after the race stating, today we had a 10th to 5th place to 20th place car, etc., etc. I feel this is a very wrong statement to make. How would you feel if it was reversed and your crew chief would say today, we had a 10th place driver? I've been told that many times. So,
yeah, I understand what he's saying, and I think that he's right in a sense that the driver could be maybe more specific on how he says that. It rolls off the tongue pretty easy to say 10th place car, and my defense of it, of the driver side of it, is saying that I think the driver has more to do with the performance of the car and the setup of the car that ultimately results in what level of a car it is than what Max is giving credit for, or what the perception here of the statement is giving credit for. The driver, the setup of the car is a result of the driver's feedback and the crew chief's interpretation of that feedback, right?
Yep.
So, I think a driver has every right to get out of the car and be like, "This is a 10th place car." Now, if the driver, the smart thing to do is get out of it and say, "Hey, we had a 10th place car today. I didn't maybe, I don't know, we just didn't make the right moves and on the car," and that's okay because the driver's involved in those moves, right? The driver's I can think of plenty of times in my career where I left a race and was like, "Dang, I shouldn't have told him to tighten the car up, or I shouldn't have told him to loosen the car up," right?
Yep.
The crew chief did what I told him to do, and we ended up with a 10th place car instead of a 5th place car, right? So I don't agree with what he's saying in that sense, and I also don't agree with I think the crew chief has less to do with a 10th place driver or a first place driver than the driver has to do with a 10th place car or a first place car, because the crew chiefs usually aren't nearly as involved in the driver's preparation of himself as the driver is on the direction of the car.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yep.
Now in other racing series like Formula One or in Europe or wherever, the engineering teams are a little bit more involved in the driving style of the driver, of how they want the car to be driven. Is that true?
That's true.
Maybe.
Yep. No, you
but
are
in
absolutely
NASCAR,
true.
it's very much part of the culture of the driver is the driver. We're going to work around his driving style.
Yep.
Right. And, the drivers don't spend a lot of time with the crew chief on their driving. They do. They look at data, they analyze data, but the drivers, especially nowadays at a Chevy team, right? The drivers are working with their driver coach.
Yep.
And the crew chief has some to do with that, but
to elaborate on your example, when I'm getting ready for road courses or anywhere actually right now, I have a friend who works at RCR in the sim department, whatever, and so he's so good at reading data that if I'm struggling, like at Watkins Glen, we did a pre-sim about 3 weeks ahead of time, and I was struggling down in 6 and 7, and I couldn't quite figure out what I was doing wrong. He looked at my data, identified it, and then we went and spent an hour and a half at an RCR sim and worked through it. My team never even, they knew I was there doing it, but it's not even their, it had nothing.
Right.
It didn't matter to them. It's like, you go figure it out. We trust you to figure it out, and you'll drive it correctly when you figure that out. So
here's maybe another point of where I'm now. The more I read this and we talk about it, it's like I disagree with what Max is saying, because it's like if a crew chief said we had a 10th place driver today, that is a personal attack. Now it might be true. It might be true because you could probably find a time in your career where you're like, shit, I don't know if I brought everything today.
Yeah,
I wasn't there. I could have done better. I was a 10th place driver.
Yep.
Right. So I'm not trying to say that every driver is a top tier driver and you can't ever criticize the driver. But to say we had a 10th place driver today is a pretty direct and personal attack on the driver, where for the driver to say we had a 10th place car, I think the driver can absolutely take some personal responsibility in that doesn't need to offend every single crew member on the team. Now, with that said, not every driver looks at it the way that I just said it.
True.
And there's plenty of drivers that get out of the car saying, we had a 10th place car, and they meant it as like, crew chief and engineers needed to do better for me. But that's ultimately a driver that will lead to having a 15th place car and a 20th place car and a 25th place car, and then not have anything.
Yep. I should have elaborated more on his tweet because there was more to it. He said, stating the above is like telling all your team that their work/effort is worth that. I would rather say something like this. Today we were aiming at a top 5 and we all came up short, or something along this way. Words matter even if the intention was genuine and correct. Yeah, I think his comparison is wrong to your point. It's Josh typed this in our chat. The equivalent of his statement would be, we had a 20th place crew chief today. It's like, that's a personal attack. Car, we're using as a euphemism for overall decision-making, performance, so on and so forth, right? It's
right.
A group together statement. It's not a you versus me, and as you put it, sometimes people mean it that way, but I'd say a majority of drivers think of it as or as Josh just typed, a culmination of everyone. It's a, this is a together statement that we're just saying this was our level of performance today as a group. And car is just being used as sort of the subject of that, but it's just terminology.
Right.
Let's move on from the Cup Series. That was all we had there. We'll see how our brackets do as we go into Bristol. It's going to be the Bristol night race. Craziness if we get the tires like we had in the spring. I don't expect that. They've kept the tires the same. Apparently at the test it was doing similar things, but as we know, teams get smarter. If they could only go 50 laps in the spring, they're going to go 80 to 100 this time, maybe 120. It's just the way this is. Or the tire will be totally different, and there'll be no fall off whatsoever. And in doing so, they'll all show up too soft, and it will have an adverse effect in some other way. So we'll see. That's NASCAR. That's how it's going to go. In the Xfinity Series, Connor Zilisch won the pole and won the race in his first ever start. He was in another zip code compared to all of us from the drop of practice. I went P1 on my second lap, then was knocked to P4. He went P1, and he never relinquished that for the entirety of practice, qualifying, and most of the race. He was in our world. That was mightily impressive. Andrew Overstreet, who's his crew chief, is a good friend of mine. We worked together for years. Still a really good friend. He's been working his way up the crew chief ranks at JRM, and that car has been so competitive across a variety of drivers and a variety of tracks. Finally got his win, but man, I think Andrew Overstreet is one of the smartest crew chiefs in the Xfinity Series, and he showed it on that day, just taking a young driver like that, who obviously brought it at a high level. But to also, in terms of their preparation, that sort of stuff, he was on it, and it was mightily impressive.
That's awesome. I've trained a ton with Connor. I've been a big fan of his since he was 16 years old. That's.
Wait a second. Did you just do the thing where like, hey, I found him first?
No.
You find a cool song or a band, and you're like,
a little bit. I just want everybody to know how long I've been a fan of his.
You're like,
I knew him before he was
first.
cool.
I knew it before all you guys liked it. I liked it.
No, he's yes. Okay, sure, I did. Whatever. He's good, man. He's everything you see on TV and social media. I've thoroughly enjoyed working with him and watching him, and I also, without just fawning over him completely, his team that around him of people, including Josh Wise, but his representation and what Chevy has done for him, they're doing it the right way and the modern way right now. They've done a good job adapting to what the modern professional race car driver needs to develop to be a professional. And that is, he's racing everything, right? He's racing TA2, he's run 24 hours of Daytona, he's raced on dirt, he's racing short tracks and late models. He's in a little bit of everything, and that's because when you look at the NASCAR schedule, right, it is the most diverse professional racing schedule on the planet, and it requires a lot of skills, a wide variety of skills to be successful. So it's just cool to see. It's cool to see it, but it's also, I don't know. It's just that's the modern development of a driver, right? It's not like we just have some sprint car driver who's a phenom and then they put him in a stock car and he's doing good there too, right? This is a well thought out, well developed young race car driver, and it's working for him and his whole team.
It's like he's designed to be the modern driver, and you named it and mentioned it. It's this idea of road course and ovals, dirt, everything. Be good at it, experience and be good at all of it. Be a generalist, not just a specialist, because that's what it's going to take to be the modern day Cup driver. My family asked me about him, and I said, to be honest, he's doing what every kid from here on out, if you want to be a NASCAR Cup Series driver, is going to have to do. And you're going to have to go drive all this different stuff, not be a specialist, be a generalist, and have your specialties. You got to be good at all, and you got to rise up and be almost the best at all of it.
And if you're young right now listening to this, that starts with iRacing, right? That starts with how you race on iRacing. Don't just go straight to, the C-fixed truck schedule and run trucks on ovals because, you want to get good at running Richmond and Homestead. Like, you need to run every single car possible on every track and get good at all of them because that's what NASCAR is right now.
Yep.
And that's what Connor Zilisch is. I don't know what he is because it's funny because, like, in my perception of him, and I think it's because his original upbringing was go-kart racing, and he's a phenomenal go-kart talent. So my original perception of Connor is that he's a go-kart racer or he's a road course driver, right? But then you look at him at what he's truly doing, and it's like he's just so much more than that. But that is by design. That's what it takes. So that's the part of it that makes me a fan of him. Other aside from his personality and just his talent overall, like, I mean, I appreciate what I'm witnessing because they're doing it right.
Yep, he is a really, really nice kid too. Like, really nice. He actually is the first time I've ever been beaten by a spotter of mine in a race. He spotted for me at Chicago this year in the final 2 corners.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, and so I was like, I just got my ass kicked by my spotter. Damn. No, he's way more than a spotter. He has a way longer career in driving than spotting, and he doesn't have to worry about spotting for a long, long time. Let's move on to this controversy. We mentioned at the top of the show in the Xfinity series. I don't have much information on this because I had forgotten before asking some more people about this. But he did this in front of me. We get done with the race at Watkins Glen, and there's an onboard video from SVG's car watching this, and I was right behind SVG, of Chandler Smith hitting walls on the cooldown lap. Like, the whole lap.
Where did he finish again? Was he top five?
Top five. He was top five.
Okay.
Yeah. So what does he do?
So when I finished third in New Hampshire, I got disqualified because my car was too low. Mm-hmm. And at a lot of, they check heights at pretty much all these tracks, but one of the reasons, our car was too low because of, you're pushing the limit, right, on their setup, especially short tracks. You want the car to be set up as low as possible. And one of the reasons they push the limits, even as, beyond what is capable of even passing inspection, is because a lot of times at short tracks you end the race with some level of damage, even if it's not a ton of damage, enough damage that NASCAR looks at the car and goes, we can't check the heights on this car, right? Mm-hmm. Well, I finished third in New Hampshire and got disqualified. I had no damage on my car. My car, it was a perfectly clean race, and there was no damage, and so I had to go to the height sticks, and sure enough, I was too low. And so later that year, when I finished fourth at Phoenix, at the end of the season, there was some damage on my car after the race, and they weren't able to.
When did this occur?
I don't actually remember when I got the damage.
What's the statute of limitations on this?
I don't remember when I got the damage, whether it was in the race itself or coming off of turn 2 on the cooldown lap. But there was damage on my car, and they weren't able to check heights.
Interesting.
And so that is interesting to me to see. I saw the same clip that you're talking about. And
games.
Yeah, so that's that would be my only guess is that there was just needed to make sure that if heights were to be checked, there was enough damage to make NASCAR look at it and go, well, I guess we can't check heights.
That's shocking. Would teams do that? That's shocking.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Jeez. Gosh, that was Joe Gibbs' cars. Anyway, it was announced today Nick Sanchez will be driving for Big Machine Racing in 2025, taking the car that I'm currently in, of course. As I announced, I'm no longer racing full-time. I did tweet that he can have the keys in 8 weeks. I'll try to keep it in good condition. Best of luck, Nick. Hope you do great. He's won a couple times in trucks this year. He obviously drove for Big Machine at the end of 2022 and had some good results. So we'll, hopefully he can take the baton and take it to the next step. But that's finally out there. So now you all know Nick Sanchez will be driving this car next year at Big Machine Racing.
Cool.
So, yep, wish him the best of luck. And like I said, I hope I can keep them in pretty good condition. But I'm not responsible for the tire condition. I'm putting that out there. Sorry. We also say goodbye to NASCAR Xfinity on NBC and USA. That was the last one ever, or at least for the time being, the next 7 years, as Xfinity is moving to the CW going forward, and we'll be on the CW for all 33 races next season. But it is the NBC production team and NBC talent this year. So it will be Rick Allen, Steve Letarte, Jeff Burton, a mix of everyone Marty Snyder, Kim Kuhn, Dave Burns, so on and so forth. It's just going to be on the CW for the next 8 races as we go into Bristol and then all the playoffs. So pretty cool. I think this is a thing that people kind of saw and maybe wondered how it came about.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is a great example of NASCAR and new partners and NBC working together to drive people to the CW to understand that this is where Xfinity will be, as opposed to Daytona 2025, everyone turning on Fox and whatever and being like, where the hell's Xfinity? I want to watch the Daytona race, the biggest rating of the year. The Daytona Xfinity race can do 2.5 million viewers, 3 million viewers sometimes. It's a huge TV event. Getting people in the groove, like this is where CW is, this is how you watch it, so on and so forth. That's I think it's a good thing. All the practice and qualifyings will still be on NBC Sports app for the rest of 2024, so you can catch those though there. So we'll see. It's really, I like that though. This working together to drive the fans and give them knowledge of where things are at. Let's switch to open wheel. We have a little bit more F1 stuff than normal here. We finally have some stuff to talk about in F1. First and foremost, we have 2 laps to go. Sergio Perez and Carlos Sainz wreck in a battle between Leclerc, Sainz, and Perez at the end of the race. I mean, I don't know if there's much to discuss other than, hey, Carlos Sainz, there's a car to your left. Guy
That's
inside.
what it looked like to me.
Yeah, like I know this was like all over social media and everything, and I'm like, I don't know if there's much racing incident here. The red car, Carlos Sainz, went left into the Red Bull car.
So do they have a penalty ready for that? Was there, or do they call it a racing incident?
Do we know if there's a penalty right now?
Let me check. I mean, usually F1's one of those places where if you look at someone wrong, you get a penalty, so they probably do.
Yep. While you look that up, let's move on to the next topic. This one's a lot of fun. I love stuff like this. So the McLaren rear wing is flexing down, essentially creating, a little bit of DRS. Now, this flexi wings have been a topic in F1 for the better part of 20 years, where
and
NASCAR. We have watched people design materials that allow the wing at a certain amount of load as it goes over 170 miles an hour or whatever, start to flatten out, because at that load, you know that you're actually trying to have the least amount of drag and not create downforce, and then as you brake, it suddenly releases that load and goes into full downforce mode. This has been going on forever, so much so that for many years and still to this day, they do flexi wing tests. They do it on the front. They do it on the rear. They do it all the places. But teams continue to find, gaps in the rules that allow them to do these flexible wings, and this is just always a moving target in F1. There was a lot of people on Twitter, these lovely Twitter accounts that have no idea what they're talking about, being like, "Oh my God, this is insane." Well, it's like, this has been here for 20 years, so this is nothing new. If the FIA considers it to be too much, they will then enact another flexible wing test or improve the flexible wing test, or they'll add the amount of pressure that the flexible wing test gets under, and they will evolve and make McLaren change it going forward. But I do love to see this because I think it's the ingenuity that continues to be in F1.
I love first of all, I don't want to completely, since you gave me a hard time about Connor Zilisch, and I knew it before it was cool, and then you just did the same thing with the Flexi wings to all the Gen Z Twitter and TikTok and Instagram F1 fans who are new fans that don't know what what we lived through, us old guys.
Hey, man. You didn't even know
I'm not
going to
make fun of them because yes, this is one of those oldest trick in the book things now, similar to tire pressures trying to leak air, things like that are just like, you're always going to be trying to find ways to get away with this. And you said it right? Like that the rule book is a moving target, right? So the teams are always identifying some new opportunity to be able to do something that is a proven technology that is just a tale as old as time, right? They're going to keep trying to find ways to manipulate flexibility in the car to their advantage. And I love it. I love seeing stuff like that. Like, you have flexible wings on the front, on the back. In NASCAR, let's not forget that we mess with flexible suspension, right?
Yep.
With the truck arms on Xfinity cars, previously Cup cars, but on the Xfinity cars, the truck arms are basically made out of spring steel, right?
Yep.
And torqued to a certain torque spec so that they're tight enough that they don't fall off, but they're loose enough that they move.
Yep.
Right? And those are all so that the body can move in a certain... What's that?
That's one of the hardest parts about driving. Yeah, well, it's the hardest.
Because they move so much.
You have to get used to the rear end moving into the corner like you're spinning out, and
right.
You have to adjust that. It's wild.
Right. And then, in NASCAR stuff, we've had windshields that cave in, right?
Yep. Body deformations,
you have rear windows that cave in. You have
Yeah.
all kinds of body panels, right? The right side of the cars, we try to get them to cave in and flatten out. In super speedways, NASCAR, puts a weight on the spoilers to make sure that the spoilers don't flex, right? Because at a super speedway, you'd want the spoiler to lay back. Everybody will always, anytime you're talking about spoilers at super speedways, you'll talk about the time that Michael Waltrip won the truck race at Daytona, making a last lap pass because his spoiler broke, right? Which was, just phenomenal. Mm-hmm. So this is all just so interesting. And I know I just made a very NASCAR-focused response to something that's happening in F1 right now, but that's just the beauty of motorsports engineering, and it's cool and it's fascinating. And McLaren is obviously, now that we're seeing this 3 months later than it probably has been happening. And it probably has a lot to do with where their speed has come from.
Yep.
And, F1 might make a rule change, it sounds like. I don't know. Maybe. They're reviewing it. Who knows?
The rule. Yeah, they'll evolve the tech process, whatever. They do this all the time. It happens all the time. And to your point, it's just this is part of motorsports ingenuity. Yeah. Yep. The car, there is a lot of performance to be found in the car, and that is just the basis of motorsports.
I'll cap this off. You made me think of something that made me want to cap off this conversation. Is this stuff is exciting, and you can hear it in my voice that this is the ingenuity that we love about motorsports.
Yep.
But it is also the thing that makes racing cost tens and hundreds of millions of dollars. Right?
Yep.
So when NASCAR pursued a next-gen car that is a quote-unquote spec car, right, where you're not allowed to manipulate the car, you're not manufacturing any components, you're not designing any components, it's essentially to eliminate this. And it's not the ingenuity that they want to eliminate, it's just the expense that comes along with it, right? Because just to make this wing flex the way that McLaren made it flex probably took hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars probably millions of dollars of engineering resources, sim time, design resources, CAD drawings, and core processors that are running CFD models 24/7 to optimize. You know what I mean? Like, and then the manufacturing of it, right? Like building the carbon components yourself, testing them, stress testing them so that they flex the right amount, just like they did in the sim, but not flex so much that they break. It's probably millions of dollars was spent just on this wing alone, and that is why motorsports cost so much money. And so
I'm stopping you, but because I want to add something. What's crazy about that is with the modern day F1 budget cap, when they're making decisions like this, they have to think about, hey, can we get the result we need if we're going to allocate millions to this idea that we think we can do this? Are we going to get the result we need, and could we have a long enough run with it that we can make up the points deficit to Red Bull and and the speed deficit to them to go after this world championship in knowing that most likely it's going to get eventually found and banned or whatever, or to that flip side, that's the modern day F1 decision making that you have to make in engineering and between the budget team and that sort of thing to say, hey, we want to do this. This is how it's going to work, that sort of thing. But also think about the tracks they've gone to as of late. Since probably they've had their big performance uptick, let's think about some of these tracks. You have Silverstone, high-speed track. This would have been really helpful. Monza was in there, super helpful. Zandvoort, yeah, it's a high downforce track, but once again, if you can get less drag down the straightaways you have there, which are pretty long, that could be helpful. And then you go to Baku, which is like a Monza in terms of low downforce, and even though it's a street course, they could, even to get even more like analytical with it, choosing the area of the season to unleash this.
So that's a really good point, but and I think that the spending cap helps that, or at least makes it interesting and more clear to define, and keeps the teams from spending too much. But the teams, whether it's F1 teams or NASCAR teams today, have always had to make that choice because spending cap or no spending cap, they only have so much money to spend, right? Even Mercedes, right? And even Hendrick Motorsports still only has so much money to spend. I know our perception of them as a fan or as competitors has been, they got an unlimited budget. They don't have an unlimited budget. They have a limited budget. It just might be 10 times the size of your budget, but they still only have so much money to spend. So the teams have always made these decisions. I think I've referenced sim. I know I have personally with you. I don't know if we've talked about it on this podcast, but with a Chevy team, several years ago in the sim, we did a sensitivity test, is what they called it, where we checked, they created a whole matrix of all these different sensitivities that make the cars go faster, right? More horsepower, downforce, drag, CG, weight, actual weight, just all kinds of different sensitivities, big knobs they call it, right? Ooh, that's a good visual for the YouTube photos on YouTube.
That looks, big
knobs to turn.
Definitely clipped.
Big knobs to turn, right, up and down to see, to figure out. We spent a whole day in the sim doing this to figure out exactly what you just said, right? We have $1 million to spend. Should we spend it finding 5 horsepower? Should we spend it finding 100 pounds of downforce? Should we spend it finding an inch of CG to lower? Should we spend it by reducing 10 horsepower of drag? Like, where should we spend our $1 million, right? This was a decade ago in the sim, long before any kind of spending cap. Obviously, NASCAR doesn't have a spending cap, but this was with a team that had a perceived unlimited budget, right? And they still had to do R&D to figure out, where do we spend our next $1 million?
Weird. I thought NASCAR was just you just kind of showed up, man, and drove around in circles.
Aren't the cars all the same?
Yeah, man. They look great. And then the NASCAR is just stupid. You just drive in the circle. No. Anyway. The voices we probably shouldn't anymore. That was not good. We'll see where that goes. In response to this was an interesting thing that came out Red Bull has canceled their special liveries for Coda and Singapore for fear of causing too much weight on the car. Now, we've seen this as a trend in F1 the last couple of years. You see heavy use of carbon, exposed carbon, and trying to stop having to paint or even do any sort of coloring. And that's, to keep the weight down on these cars. So here's Red Bull looking for every ounce of performance right now that they need suddenly to fight for this world championship, saying we're not going to do special liveries. Kind of wild.
Yeah.
So
interesting.
So crazy. Hey, so we brought up the incident between Perez and Sainz. Josh, did you find out what the penalty situation was?
Yeah, it's pretty simple. No penalty.
Oh, perfect. Racing incident.
Racing deal.
Yeah,
and
guess you can just turn
Sainz
left.
was left very confused why there was no penalty.
How?
Interesting.
Unless I'm looking at this wrong.
He quote said, "I followed the racing line that we all follow on every lap."
But there was a car to your inside. That's okay. There's a lot to unpack there. We're gonna let that one sit for a second and simmer and marinate, because that makes no sense. I don't care if the line is one particular way. If there's a car inside of you, you no longer can use the line. That is just pretty much racing 101. Often I want to use the main line at, say, Bristol if the bottom is a spot, but suddenly if there's a car below me, I can't do it anymore because there's a physical object there. So that's ridiculous. That's definitely his fault. Let's move into IndyCar just quickly to put a bow on their season. Alex Palou is the champion, his third championship. The guy is just sensational. Beat Will Power there at the Music City Grand Prix. A big machine racing event, by the way. Scott Borchetta and his whole team knocked it out of the park. Big crowd, huge festival atmosphere. They had concerts all week. I actually saw Brantley Gilbert was doing their concert in Broadway, and there was a video they posted, and his security guy was wearing one of my hoodies, and I felt pretty cool for a second. Yeah, I thought it was awesome. So, Colton Herta won the race, his first oval win in IndyCar, which is shocking. I think I've picked him 100 times to win ovals before, so can't believe that. That breaks a pretty long winless streak. How long was his winless streak, Josh? Do we know? We need you for stats today.
I can find this information out.
Please find that out.
He
went through a bit of a lull here. Such a rock star driving talent, and a couple years ago looked like he would just dominate the series.
It's kind of cooled off. I mean, he was, obviously rumored to go to F1 and be a part of Andretti. He didn't get his super license. That was a big deal.
Well, he won in Toronto, which was
that's right,
which ended the 39 race winless streak.
That's what I was thinking.
So
I'm sorry, I forgot
to answer your question, it's been like a race or two since he won last. Maybe.
Yeah, no, okay, all right. But but the one I meant was Toronto. Yeah, thanks, Josh. Just cut his mic. Cut it right now. You're making me not look smart. He did cool off for a while and then figured it out, and now I can't remember what I was going to say, but it was a really, really cool, important point that I've lost. Yeah, no. Damn. What was I going to say?
We'll tune in next week.
Yeah, tune in next week to find out what I was going to say before Josh rudely interrupted me with the facts of the situation. Congrats, Colton. I've picked you a lot of times. You've lived up to it now twice in the last couple races. Thank you very much. Wait, I had something from that. It's going to bother me now. IndyCar, Nashville, Colton Herta.
Should have put it down on the show notes, Parker.
I know, but I just thought of it in the moment, and now it's gone. All right, let's talk global motorsports. We mentioned it at the top. All the Australian/New Zealand drivers have been invading NASCAR, and now Toyota has decided to invade their version of NASCAR in Supercars with a GR Supra, which is pretty cool. That's going to be awesome. So cool to see Supercars get another manufacturer. It's been a bit of a drought with Ford and Holden basically building cars in Australia and such. They haven't had. It's been an awkward time for the Supercar series.
Is that what the car is going to look like?
Well, that's what a Supra looks like.
That, if you are obviously listening on audio, well, I guess we're not showing it, but that is
show it.
You need to Google this car.
It
or
looks
whatever what it
very,
could look like. I don't.
Very.
It does not look like a supercar, like a V8 supercar. It looks different.
They've changed.
And it's a Supra. It's its own thing.
Yep.
Just saying,
Well, a couple years ago, they went away from the sedans, and basically, the Mustang allowed, and then they had that convoluted Mustang that was like sort of a sedan, and now they have like full-on Camaros and Mustangs, basically. And
I love the V8 supercars and how they look like a road car.
Oh yeah, no, they look tremendous. They look great. So that's going to look great. It is a far smaller car than a Camaro and a Mustang, though. Like, they're tiny on the inside. If you'd like a review of the 2024 GR Supra 45th Anniversary Edition, go to my YouTube. Parker Kligerman's YouTube did a review earlier this year up at Lime Rock with it. Made a whole video and everything. It's done almost 5,000 views. Yeah, so if you haven't checked it out, check it. Hey, Blaney, would you watch it? Check it out.
I have liked and subscribed.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate it. That's wonderful. I appreciate your efforts. We're heading to Bristol next. As we said, I'm actually tomorrow, so this will go out on Wednesday night or Thursday morning. I've got Sim the day before Bristol, and then we are racing the Xfinity Series on CW Friday night at Bristol, one of the best race weekends of the year. I'll be on NBC as well on Saturday for the Cup race. I love the Bristol night race, man. It's such a good one.
It's one of my favorite races of the year. I love racing there. So,
oh, no.
Good luck, man.
No, dude. Oh, my God. Oh, I can't believe this. When I had that whole brain fart there for a while, we used up the time that we had Kyle Busch in the waiting room ready to come on here. I have completely blew through our time.
No.
Oh, for the love. Oh, holy. All right, Kyle, here's the deal. We're gonna make it happen next week. It's gonna happen. I know you're listening, bud. Look, the green room, you've loved it. You've spent so much time in there this year. We appreciate that. Next week's the week. We're gonna get you on. Look forward to having you. So stay tuned for Kyle Busch next week on the Money Lap. Peace.
Bye.
Thanks for listening or watching. If you want to be heard on this show, go to moneylap.com to leave us a voicemail. Be funny, be irreverent, or be insightful, but don't be dumb. If you're watching on YouTube, please like, comment, and subscribe. That helps us grow. And if you're listening, please leave us a 5-star review to be featured on this show. Follow us on X, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. We'll see you there.